right. What's up, everybody? This is Jason from the Tone Lab, and welcome to another episode of Chillin' in the Studio. And today I got an old school homeboy, Christian Pito Petersen, man. How you doing, man?
I'm good, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show. I know you just played a gig, a couple weeks ago?
Yeah.
Was it last week?
Yeah.
And I heard that might be your last gig. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me say first, thanks for inviting me on the show.
Absolutely.
Not too many people want to hear what I got to say, but you guys do. So I appreciate it. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to pack up the family and move out of Colorado finally and try to see if I can't find a retirement home. I think I found a home, but I hadn't played a show in a few years. Life gets busy and tosses a lot of wrenches in your gears at you, and you got to make that decision at some point in your life of man, I got a family here. I gotta I can't be doing these tours and these shows and selling all this merch every weekend. So you got to make that decision at some point. And I hadn't played a show in a long time, so I called up the guys from Legion with Leonard and Joe, and we said, let's do one last gig. So we did it at Black Sky last Saturday, and it was a good time. Yeah,
and you did it as Legion of Death, huh?
Yeah.
Awesome.
That was my original plan was to do a final Zombie Hate Brigade show, but Nick has had some health issues lately, and
sorry to hear that.
And the good thing is he's doing better. He's doing much better, and he just had surgery where they had to go back and fuse portions of his spine and his neck.
Shit.
So it's made portions of his body go numb, so he can't even hold it.
Bummer. Well, that's not good.
I went and hung out with him though a couple weeks ago, and he's doing much better. He's still the same old Nick. He's still Nick. He's just.
Shout out to Nick, man. Sorry. Hope he gets better. Gets his feeling back. Shoot, that's crazy. Well, usually I'm joined with my co-host Tony Engel. He's not here today. He said to throw a shout out to you and say what's up. Sorry he couldn't be here, but instead we got my boy Brian Fisher here, man. How you doing?
Doing good. Just chilling.
Hey, thanks for coming in, man. Like we talked about in a prior episode, we get you in more on co-hosting some of these shows. So this is the first one. So we're off and rolling, man. So, I guess we'll just start at the beginning. You've probably been asked this question a million times, but what first got you into music?
Probably just like what anybody else, I mean, my family, it's not that they're huge musicians or anything like that, but my brother was, he's a guitarist, had a lot of music growing up, and just going through his cassette collection and finding, AC/DC, the Eagles, and then of course Kiss came along. And I think Kiss was probably my biggest turning point. And, and how I gravitated to him, I don't know, because my brother was just anti-Kiss, dude. I couldn't listen to the albums in his room or on his cassette player or anything. If I played it, it was on one of those little 6-inch, speakers on the little tape recorders, with the handles that had C batteries in it or whatever.
Mono.
Yeah, all mono. And that's what I had, dude. But how I really got into the band, I don't know. But I mean, the theatrics, of course, is what is going to draw any kid that's 6 to 12 and, into it. And it just gravitated from there, I mean, I think my first introduction to heavy metal was I was going through my sister's record collection, and I found Rainbow's Long Live Rock and Roll. And I heard, Cozy Powell's double drum kicks and that. And I was like, what the hell am I missing? I was like, there's a whole nother thing out there. And, I'm 9 years old. And
yeah.
I think Rainbow was my first real introduction to heavy metal. And it just went from there, got my.
It was a Blackmore too, right?
Yeah, that was with Blackmore and Ronnie James Dio, in which I didn't have no idea that it was.
So was there some double kick in that?
Man, dude, you got to if you haven't heard that album, dude, you got to jam it, bro. Rainbows.
I'm sure I have, but I because we've had this debate like who started doing the double kick, you know, and I wound up taking it all the way back to that band that did the Black Betty. Whoa, Black Betty, that's got double kick.
Ginger Baker claims that he was the first one that did double bass back in the day, but
but I'm talking like we're doing it. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's what Cozy Powell was doing, you know, and he was doing triplets.
It's a rainbow.
And you know, and he was a hell of a drummer, dude. And then
absolutely.
You know, and then you're backed by, you know, Ronnie James Dio and Richie Blackmore, and you got yourself a heavy metal band, dude. Right. You know?
And so then when you got a guitar? Like how old were you got a guitar? And then when did you start like, okay, I'm going for bands and I'm going to start playing some heavies?
Well, I moved out here from northern Minnesota. I'm from a small town called Cloquet, Minnesota, which is about 45 minutes north of Duluth, 2 hours north of the cities, if that puts a pinpoint on anybody's map. I moved out here when I was 14 years old, and I just fell into a group of dudes that
Colorado
in Colorado. Yeah. And I just fell into a group of guys that were into the same music that I was. And, I'll never forget getting I can't even remember what brand it was, dude, but it was even like zebra striped, you know, it was white and black, you know, but it had that star design, like the Ibanez. What are those things called? Dang, that's going to bug the heck out of me. I'll come back to it. But anyway, you know, it was just a hideous guitar. And I found a dude in, you know, the Denver Post that was selling a guitar. I went to his house, paid him $70, and I got myself a guitar.
Nice.
And, you know, lo and behold, you know, you need an amp.
Got your first guitar for $70 out of the Denver Post.
Yeah.
Explain that to your kids.
Tell me you're from Colorado without telling me if you're from Colorado.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but you know, you go home and you start plucking it, and you're like, oh man, you know, there's a whole other lesson to be learned back behind this. And my brother had an old home stereo, and it literally had a guitar jack in it, and you could plug the guitar into this home stereo, and you start plucking it, and you're like, that doesn't sound like Angus Young. You know, that doesn't sound like what's coming out of those Iron Maiden records, dude. No.
Probably like a Marantz or something. Like a Marantz, the old ass, headquarters.
What's funny is because I've heard you tell that, and you know, I have a similar experience because like I went to visit my mom for a summer in like Amarillo, Texas, and she just lived. Anybody's been to Amarillo, Texas, it's like there's the city, and then as you get outside the city, it's just completely flat. And there's just trailers as far as you can see, you know? It's like, I remember you just driving on this flat and you'd come over this one little ridge. And I was like, yeah, you know, our tornado is just like, yeah, let's go. Like, cause it's just, and I was like trapped out there, and I would just sit out there watching these rainstorms, and I had my guitar plugged into this like silver face old 70s stereo, but I had my little distortion pedal, and I had it all wired in, all hokey, and I would just sit there, and it was like, man, this distortion's great. You know, and it's like, oh, and then here it's like, oh, hey, there's a fellow stereo head freaking had your guitar plugged into a stereo. That's awesome. Yeah. And then and then you started getting into bands. You kind of put together your first band. Was Decimation your first band?
Yeah, Decimation was my first band.
How old were you?
I was 15. Yeah, I was 15, and we started playing shows at 16.
At 16, what year was that?
1988, 87.
Boom, 88. There it is.
Snatched up a dope ass name for that early. You know, that's.
I remember when I moved to Colorado. It would have been 91, and so I probably seen some Decimation flyers.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. I think we changed the name
with the D and.
Yeah. I think we changed our name in 93, 92, 93.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yeah. We were talking with Jeff, Jeff Kahn, and he was talking about, Hideous Corpse, 89, and that's your name came up because it's like, well, what other bands were kind of in that scene right then? Like who were your peers? Like, what were the bands you looked up to or that were around that were kind of hopping right then?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, we used to we would gig. We did a few shows with Hideous Corpse. Jeff is like he's a whole nother legend to the scene of Colorado.
Exactly.
I mean, he what he created with Hideous Corpse and Skeleton of God was something that no other person really could do. I don't want to say any other person could do, but I mean, even though they're in a death metal genre, they're labeled as death metal, but they were so different. They were still so different. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know how to quite explain.
Well, it's weird. Go ahead.
I was going to say, listen to the first riff on the Skeleton of God, and you're just like, what is this?
Yeah, and you're just like, this is different. This is something that nobody else is doing. And Jeff really, he bought, all those guys brought a different element to the Denver death metal scene. And but we did quite a few shows, and that's when he was with Hideous Corpse. He had Brian Greer, that was the singer, and yeah, we did quite a few shows with them, and they used to live up in Boulder, and we go to Boulder all the time and party with them in this big ass house.
So LOD was popping right then too, right?
Yeah, and those guys were like my introduction. Them and there was another band called Defimator. They kind of had a more glam look, but they were definitely more thrash. And then the Violent Degenerates. I love those guys. I speak with Dave Stremmel every now and then, and those were the bands that, as a kid, I was going to these shows and watching these gigs like they were playing at McNichols. Right. I was like, this is what I want to do. This looks fun. People are drinking in the parking lot. They come in and they freaking just tear the place apart and mosh, dude. And that was my introduction to the local metal scene, was Legion of Death, Violent Degenerates, Defimator, Straight Nine.
How would you describe your music? Was it thrash? Was it a little more thrash death? Like what was your first? Well, how would you describe like your first go around?
Well, the Decimation stuff. I mean, we were all very highly influenced by, the German scene. So Creator, Destruction, Sodom,
right.
And but as we were finding those bands, the United Kingdom's coming out with Napalm Death and Carcass,
right?
And, so we ended up kind of gravitating more towards the grindcore stuff, and it's old school grindcore, because now you got bands like Insect Warfare that are just hyper, but so when we had Decimation, we were definitely more thrash. And then we just kind of progressed, but a little bit different and getting faster and heavier, and basically kind of mimicking these bands that were coming out of the United Kingdom. And it was just like, okay, we're going to try to play fast too. And so we kind of made this death grind thing, I guess. We called ourselves grindcore because that's what grindcore was back then.
Sure.
It's definitely not what it is now. You got bands, like Insect Warfare and No Moss, and No Moss is sick, dude. Those guys are brutal. Yeah.
They've been brought up 2 days and two shows in a row now.
Oh, really? Yeah. They're freaking, they're good, dude. And, but bands like that, that are a completely different selection of grindcore. So we labeled ourselves as grindcore coming in. But I mean, if you wanted to, I
mean, that's the birth of grindcore, though. So you're allowed to have that label. You know what I'm saying?
That's what's funny about Undertaker is we thought we were clever. This is like 1993. And we called ourselves deathcore, which is actually a term now. And it does not mean, because we figured it was like a cross between death metal and grindcore. So we called ourselves deathcore. And deathcore means a completely fucking different thing now.
Yeah,
exactly. And just like in Legion of Death's album, the first album from 1988, one of the lyrics in there says deathcore music spreading like a plague across the land. And I'm like, those guys called themselves deathcore? That's not deathcore anymore.
No,
that was in
no, that's
1988.
wild. Shoot, I never even heard, but the first time I heard the word core, I was like, ew.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't
guys
like
trying to
the
get-
word core associated with this. Like,
Because it was
it means
associated
something
with hard-
different.
Yeah, well, it was associated with like hardcore, which you know, a lot of those like grindcore bands like Napalm and everything, they did like hardcore and punk music. You know what I'm saying? So they were.
I lived in on the East Coast in Baltimore, and there's a ton of dope hardcore music that I like, especially when I was a kid. And then it was just like, but it was like there was like 300 different types of core too, though. For a minute, like
grindcore,
2000s,
hardcore,
like there was just panty core, fucking
core.
There was like all this different kind of core shit, and I was just like, but really to me, I'm like, man, I get genres because you gotta put some of it in a genre for sure, but to me it was all just metal, man, and I'm just like, it's metal, the kids are throwing down, there's mosh pits, but
that's the way I
like,
am now.
Because now it's like, and maybe that's like, get off my lawn, and I'm just like, you kids and your damn genres.
And you ain't get your ball back either.
But I mean, there's so many cores I can't keep up, but so let's go through the full list, man, because you've been in a lot of damn bands, and so can you remember all of them?
Well, let's see. So, we got Decimation, Adnauseam, Dismembered Fetus, Yeast Infection, Throat Leech,
Festering,
Festering Puke, Lethal Death, Zombie Hate Brigade, XRNZ, THC. Did I get them all?
I don't know, but you hit 10.
There was like one or two that I didn't know.
And a lot of these bands were just groomed out of us being bored, and that's
absolutely
how it became, something. I'll never. Do you guys remember Junior James Schizo?
It sounds
Junior
familiar.
James sounds familiar, but
I remember someone named Schizo. Yeah,
he has the most ultimate VHS collection. So, or tape collection, and we would go to his house, and he's still doing this to this day, and you go to his house, and we bring blank tapes over and record these shows that he's been trading over and over and over, and I found Anal Cunt, and I was like, I've never seen him live. So of course, I'm watching it and recording it at the same time. And I just called Josh and I was like, dude, so what are you doing today? And he's all nutting. I said, you want to do a project band? Cool. And that's how Fester and Puke came up, and that's how XRNZ came up. That's how THC came up. It was just of us, nobody had jobs, and all we did was jam. We jam and drink. Nobody had girlfriends. We're just going to go to the rehearsal space, dude, and think of another stupid band to record onto a cassette and release it.
Yeah.
Some of it, we were talking earlier about the kind of like the politically kind of incorrect shit, incorrect or uncorrect or whatever, about some of these bands. And I know all you dudes, and I know the impetus behind all of everything and none of you guys are, but it was like, and that's kind of metal in a nutshell, which is like, fucking with the squares, fucking with the man. Like, you'll say some outlandish shit. You don't necessarily mean it the way, like some people would. It's like the PMRC type of shit. Like, oh, you're trying to. It's like, yeah, we're just trying to piss you off. We're not devil worshippers. We're not fucking, like the thing that I think of is like porno grind. And there are some weirdos in that genre that are kind of, they kind of believe, they smell their own farts. You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, it was just to make other weirdos like us who had a dark sense of humor fucking laugh. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's great for a project band. You're never going to go play fucking McNichols Arena with fucking...
Yeah, and that's what, and like Fester and Puke, like I said earlier, the band, it's almost kind of unspoken because of the way the world is today. And we were there just to piss people off. And we were saying things that we wouldn't say in a normal conversation. We wouldn't say to another human being. We were just trying to be as obnoxious as we possibly could. And it worked. It worked in a couple areas, and it
almost worked too well. always used to say it with like the Andrew Dice Clay of metal. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know that Andrew Dice Clay is saying this shit purposely. You know, Mary, quite contrite. You know, I'm not going to finish that joke, but.
And that's what it was. It was supposed to be a joke, you know, and
some people can't take a joke.
No, and I still get people, you know, the guys in the underground today that still find me on like Facebook and stuff, and they're like, "You want to do a Fester and Puke discography?" And I'm like, "No,
nah,
I don't think so, man. I don't think so. You'll probably sell 4, and it's going to be all to your homies, dude. So save your cash, bro. Save your cash, and then it's just." It's not an acceptable type of thing.
no.
Yeah. So I guess this is kind of a loaded question, but out of those projects, which ones were the most fulfilling?
You know,
or all of them in a way. They're all like kids.
They are. But I would have to say Zombie Hate Brigade, because I was a lot more hands-on. I had a lot more experience, you know, not that I knew anything really about marketing or anything like that, but I knew how to get the merch out there. I knew how to get into the studios. I knew how to create a CD and a cassette. You know, I had a lot more, you know, behind me, and just learning experiences from the prior bands. And we were tongue in cheek. So we were happy to almost kind of tell jokes and horror movie stuff and just be our goofy selves, you know. Right. We never try to take ourselves too serious, you know, but try to put the seriousness into the music. I mean, our lyrics were corny as hell. Nick wrote 95% of them, and you know, and they were corny. They were corny, and it was perfect for the band. You know, yes. You know, the name of the band said it all. That Zombie Hate Brigade, that's a stupid name. Exactly. Exactly. You know, but I had a lot of fun with those guys. We went, you know, we played a lot of shows, played a lot of out of state shows, did a couple little tours and stuff. And we just, I don't know, we had fun. And then, you know, the merchandise basically sold itself. You put a zombie on a t-shirt.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's $10-15 right there. It was, you know, and it was an easy marketer too. So
I think I still have a button up.
Do you really?
I think so, somewhere. I think I have
the Dickies. The Dickies work shirt.
Yeah. The Dickies. I think I still have it somewhere. I should have fucking wore. I should have dragged it out of my closet.
Freaking sick, dude. I think I just packed mine up too. Because I
think I have it. I hope I still have it. But
yeah, I threw you some love. I wore one of yours in a video, a music video we did.
Oh, sick, dude!
For propaganda, I'm wearing a zombie t-shirt. We're like, oh, what's the zombie thing? Oh, it's like a friend's band, like us band.
And that was another thing. And Christ, I'm doing it right now. I'm wearing a friend's band, Hester Moth. Right. Another new death metal band that's coming up out of. It's actually got a couple dudes from the first incarnation of Cephalic.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And the singer, he just lives right up the street. And they hit me up one day, wanting me to do vocals for it. And I couldn't commit to it, because originally it was supposed to be just like an internet project or jam, you know, a couple times a month. And then it started getting a little bit more involved. And I was like, nah. I was like, I don't want to get this involved again. And my neighbor up the street was looking for a band. I was like, here, contact this dude. And boom, now they're doing shows and recording and stuff. So they're hitting it off. And, but I've always been that person though. Like when I played a show, I always play, you know, I'd always wear my homie's band shirt or something, dude.
Right.
You know, I remember wearing a Butcher Shop show shirt at one of your guys' gigs, or it was with Throat Leech. We were playing at some goofy ass bar out in frickin' Aurora. And it was.
Oh, yeah, there's some goofy ones out there.
Yeah.
Like the Sports Castle.
Sports field. Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was.
Sports Field on Colfax.
Off of Colfax.
It was a tiny little place.
Tiny little place.
And we played on like a Wednesday night too on top of that. And I remember Brian being all pissed off because I was like, come on, dude, let's do this show. And he's like, I got to go to school. And I'm like, fuck school. Just when he's in college. And I'm like, no, we're going to do this gig instead. You know, and I've always done that. I've always, you know, wore my homies band shirts when we were jamming, you know, playing. Yeah, you know,
I would never turn them down either. Like a show, like, oh, you want to play at freaking Jimbo's freaking house of freaking whatever, like on a Monday night, like, yeah, let's go. Like, you know what I mean? It's like we'll get three people in there slapping each other. We'll figure it out. Like, you know, it was just like
shut that bitch down.
Yeah. So, any favorite releases or songs you're particularly proud of? That's probably a loaded question. You got 10 bands.
Yeah.
You know, it's like any memorable.
This one off of that one. I like this one off of that one. I like
this one.
Number them.
About every album. There's a couple things that I could probably say more of stuff that I don't like. You know,
sure.
and you know, the first few releases from Zombie Hate Brigade should have never been put out. They sound like ass. We were new, rushed ourselves into the studio. Probably should have never done them. The first Adnauseam demo, we were young, went into a studio that does rap music. So of course it came out super duper bassy. I wish that would get like remixed or remastered, and I have
fond memories of that one.
What's that?
I said I had fond memories of that one for some reason. I mean, maybe because it was the early days, you know what I'm saying? Because what I was going to bring up between Adnauseam and like Zombie Hate Brigade is like you have the bridging the gap from the dismembered fetus, festering yeast infection stuff, and then you have Adnauseam, which seemed like you're more like serious death metal band. Like it's a pretty serious. I mean, you even see the fucking album cover for the one, and it looks pretty fucking serious with the chick in the bathtub. And, and then you kind of
Nauseam's a good band.
You pivoted to Zombie Hate Brigade, which because I always saw you guys live. I remember hearing some of the recordings, but you seemed like you were having fun, and it was a little bit more. It was like grindcore, but more focused, and not just like kind of willy nilly. Like we're just making fun and we're just having fun, and we're just fucking with folks. Like Adnauseam seemed like the more serious, but then there was like kind of that hybrid, which was Zombie Hate Brigade, where you guys got kind of more serious as far as the musical end of it, but you weren't serious whatsoever as far as the content.
Well, you know, and we did it with Zombie. We just tried to, you know, we come up with a riff, you know, and I'm not trying to pat him on the back by any means, but we had a badass drummer. Dennis was a hell of a drummer, you know, and a good drummer can make a shitty riff sound good, you know?
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't matter how many shitty riffs we came up with, Dennis always made it sound good, you know? So
it just seemed like a fun band to be in too. Like everything it was just fun.
Well, and you know, and if you like horror movies and stuff like that, you know, the options for stage shows and merch was just endless, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, like we did when we played the Gothic for our like video release, you know, and and they put it up on the big screen, and then we came out and actually played a set. But we had like white t-shirts on that was all sprayed down with blood, and we had all these little like fake zombie posters hung up all over the freaking place. And, you know, it was just endless.
Was that the one that you played the video?
Yeah.
I was there. That was fucking phenomenal. Like you guys did cause what was the video? Explain to us what the video entailed, like how you guys set that whole video up.
Okay. So the song's called I Want to Put My Junk in Stacy. And how the title of that song came about was that there's a zombie movie called Stacy, and then there's a zombie movie called Junk. And when Nick opened up the DVD to go watch the movie Junk, the movie Stacy DVD was in there, and he's like, "Oh, that's funny. I want to put my junk in Stacy." And that's how it came about.
The song was born.
Yeah. And And how the video stuff was pretty fun. It is kind of grueling, you know, because we're zombies, so they dress you up and shoot you up with blood, and you know, and Nick became friends with the Bizjack Flemco guys, Zach Beans and or not Zach Beans. What the heck's his last name? Drawing a blank. But anyway, the two guys that are just completely influenced by Troma films, and they did everything independently. They were working on their own film, and these guys come into our life, and they're like, "Hey, can we do a music video for you?" Well, sure. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, we paid for some of the props and stuff like that, but they did all the filming and the editing and all that stuff. And we started with the video. We started filming at the cemetery up there off of Sheridan, like 30th and Sheridan. Can't remember the real big cemetery up there.
Or is that Wadsworth?
Oh yeah, Wadsworth. It's on Wadsworth.
Yeah, it's a huge cemetery.
Yeah, huge cemetery. So, you know, and you got to go up there, and it's 90 degrees out, and you're dressed in black, and you've got blood all over you with makeup. And how they made the makeup too was like they would put like a little bit of this makeup crap on you, and then put toilet paper in splotches, and then put the stuff over the toilet paper, and then pull it and tear it, and
you stretch it, you do all kinds of crazy shit to make wrinkles, and
you know, you got to shoot the video there. And then they're like, "Oh, okay, we came up with this other idea. So we got to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and we got to be down at a loft downtown at the girl, Stacy. We got to be at her place at like 8 o'clock in the morning to get ready so we can wander around downtown as zombies," which was kind of fun, man, because we spooked some folks, dude. It was pretty cool. We did spook some folks, but then, you know, by the morning, you know, it's 85 degrees out, and you're wearing black, and you're covered in all this gunk, and you walk into a liquor store just to get a Gatorade, and the guys are just like $1.85. You know, they didn't care. It's on Colfax, you know. They've seen everything.
They've seen everything.
I got a story about in the 90s. Mike Wojtyshin did a little bit of bit work, and it was out at Buckley Air Force Base, and it was for some like Armageddon type TV movie for something. This is like 1995 or 96 or something like that. And they had everybody made up, and they went long. And so there's guys with like bandages with blood and everything like that. But they were way out in Buckley, so they would come down, and they had to go to a 7-Eleven. And fucking like they freaked out because there's all these guys with bloody bandages walking into a 7-Eleven at 3 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, "Are you guys okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're fine." And then they started calling the cops and started calling ambulances. And they're like, no, we're fine. We're filming a movie. And like the cops came, the ambulances came, and they're like, "No, it's Caro syrup. It's fine." But the 7-Eleven guys wouldn't believe them. They would not believe them that they were, you know.
So that brings me to then what was the wildest or weirdest gig you ever played? Was that well, I guess that's making the video, but then was that show where you had the screens and all the stuff hung up? Was that it? Or
And it just probably, you know, in the more, you know, fun gigs, because, you know, after a while, man, you know, you play so many gigs, you can only put on so much makeup. How Kiss does it every freaking night, you know,
right.
I just couldn't, No. So, I mean, I used I used that bloody t-shirt for like 3 shows in a row or something like that, just, you know, to keep up the zombie thing, you know,
right.
But, just after a while, it was just, dude, I'm just going up there in my shorts and a t-shirt, you know, whatever. The first 2 things I pull out of the closet. Cool. That's what I'm playing my gig in today. Just, you know, but it was fun though, because it was endless when it came to like merchandise, and then, you know, lyrically, and we try to keep it as much grindcore as possible. So 2 riffs, 2-minute songs, you know, I mean, we'd switch it up a little bit, but mainly when you really think about it, it's probably the song, you know?
Gotta have your gen.
Yeah. And then you go right back and do same notes, but you know?
Double time.
Yeah. You know, and we just wanted to have as much fun with that project as we possibly could. We did play a goofy ass show though up in Fort Collins with that's when I was in yeast infection at that time. Actually, we played up in Fort Collins with Cephalic Carnage and God, I could have swore one of your bands were on the gig, dude. Maybe Throat Cult?
Possibly. Very possibly.
I know Skin.
Or Nicaraguan. Or Nicaraguan.
Maybe it was Nicaraguan Death Squad.
A little more grindy.
Some sort of fetish show.
Oh yeah. Fuck.
And we were,
what was that?
And it was like, we walk in and there was all these girls walking around in lingerie and we're like,
what the hell? You're like, yeah, please, but
yeah, and I'm trying to move equipment and stuff and like
there's a fashion. They're like, yeah, they're like rehearsing their fucking shit.
Yeah,
like their shit was more important than our shit. We had to put the backline on like a fashion show.
And it was weird. And people are like whipping each other and stuff backstage and shit. And you're just like, I was okay. what the hell? We just honey, where you at? Honey,
you know when you get a grindcore guy uncomfortable.
Yeah, dude. They did a good job. That was a weird show.
This is weird.
Yeah, you're gonna put a fetish show with freaking 5, death grind bands on it. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Let's do it.
That's crazy. Yeah, and so that brings, so I had this like horror and cult movie influence, and basically you just kind of broke it down, and I had it as a question for a minute, but the trauma team stuff. So so you made a video, or they made a video for you, so can we find that now? Is it like up on YouTube or anything?
Yep. Yeah, they did a couple of them. They did. So I Want to Put My Junk in Stacy is on YouTube, and then we also did one about the Toxic Avenger, and the song is called My Name Is Melvin. See,
right.
Shit that we got going on here,
dude. I got to bust in real quick. Are you stoked for the new Toxic Avenger? It's actually finally coming out in August.
Yes, absolutely. Nick is like
Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones is the fucking Toxic Avenger. I shit you not. Frodo from fucking Lord of the Rings is some weird. He looks like a fucking pervert or something. They couldn't release this movie for like 2 years because they were like, we can't release this movie. It's too trauma. It's too fucked up. And they finally got 2 years later, it's coming out August this year. I'm dying.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Nick is a huge freaking, B-movie freak, dude. So I know he's excited about it.
Like, I'm gonna go see that shit in the theater. Like, dude, Alamo Draft House, take my money.
Yeah, I want to actually try to get like a Lloyd Kaufman on here and like interview him and stuff. We'll see. I've been sending out emails and I've been shocked at some of the people that respond, and so it's like, man, that'd be freaking awesome.
You got some good names coming up then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Good.
So what? Do you have any like specific horror movies or any cult B movies that are your favorites like that? I know you guys used a lot of dubs and stuff, and most of those were like from the 60s and even from the 50s. And
I don't know.
Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead, of course. Return of the Living Dead. I love that freaking movie. Fido was always one of my favorites.
Yeah. Billy Connolly.
Yes. And that it brought a whole different element. There's no cussing, nothing. And there's no cussing, there's no sex in the movie. What you would normally see in a horror flick, everybody keeps their tongues cut, dude. It's a good movie, man. I really dig it. Return of the Living Dead, Fido. Man, I'm trying to think of some other ones. Zombie was good. That was a strange movie.
Zombie's weird because it was supposed to be like, it was actually supposed to be called something else, like something Flesh Eaters, because Zombie in the European region, or Dawn of the Dead in the European regions was called Zombie with an I and not an E. That so they call it, in America you get it as Zombie with an I, but in Italy and Europe it was Zombie 2, which was supposed to be Dawn of the Dead Part 2.
Really? So you should be interviewing him with the horror stuff, bro.
No, but Italian and European things, they always did that. They were such shameless fuckers when it came to, it's like if there was a Jaws movie, they would call it like Jaws 2 or Alligator 2. And it's this like horrible, it wasn't even made to be that, you know what I'm saying? But they just jumped on the band. You know how many like Evil Dead sequels around the world, that have nothing to do There's even one called like Japanese, or what is it called? Japanese Evil Dead or Evil Dead Trap, I think is what it's called. And it's a great movie, but it's just a ripoff of Evil Dead 2. You know what I'm saying? But it's fantastic, you know.
And those are classics as well. All three. You know,
right.
one, 2, and Army of Darkness. Those are
And
classics.
Ash vs. Evil Dead. Ash vs. Evil Dead was phenomenal.
So you've been in a lot of bands. You've obviously been in the studio a lot, right? You've had to done. How many recordings have you done? How many different studios have you been in? Or did you guys do a lot of DIY stuff and kind of record it yourself?
Well, I mean, of course, the early days was all, rehearsal type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
With Adnauseam, we were in 2 different studios. Yeast actually, Josh did. He bought all the recording stuff. So everything that we did with Yeast, we recorded straight in the basement, and it was all done with what Josh did. And all
4-track or 8-track?
8-track. And it was everything that he did. He bought all the fancy microphones and did the best that he could. And that's what he wanted to get into at that time, was recording the band and other bands if he could. But so that was recorded straight in the basement. And then we mastered somewhere else. But then I've been in, Tone Lab, and Firestorm Studios, Jeff.
Did you ever do Obermeyer?
No, we went to that. What was that? Whatever the first 2 zombie albums were. I'm trying to remember the name of that studio, but it was a fancy studio, real fancy with leather couches and refrigerators, and they always gave you water and stuff. But it didn't matter about what studio, it was about the producer and who was able to capture, because I've probably been in 15, maybe 20 different studios. So like your place, you captured zombie the way it should be captured, and Jeff did the exact same thing. He captured zombie Hate Brigade the way that it should be, and heavy and grindy. And that's the way it, and with a good production behind it, you guys knew what to go for, where I think every other studio besides you guys weren't great,
Just because it's a nice studio doesn't mean that, like I said, when we went to Time Capsule way back in the day, those dudes, I mean, they were completely professional, awesome, great engineers, great everything, but and back in 1993, it's very, who the fuck knows how to, even some early Scott Burns stuff was a little iffy because he was trying to figure out how to sculpt and craft this shit, and I wouldn't say any of his shit's terrible, but it's okay, these dudes like a lot of low gain and the drums are a little crazy, and so yeah, it's a learning process, and especially if you're going to one place one time, and like I said, the Time Capsule guys were very kind of hippie-ish older dudes, so we're throwing fucking blast beats, and these dudes in 1993 are like, what the, and they're they seemed like hippie dudes. So I completely understand your thing like that. It's well, what the hell did you, speaking of that Time Capsule, were you on the Vomit God stuff or no?
I did some stuff when he was when Otto was still basically kind of forming the band in the basement, and hadn't brought in live drummers and stuff like that. And I did some vocals for some demo stuff that he did with some, electronic drums that he's programmed, but that was it. Yeah.
He didn't program those.
Was it you?
I was saying the old Vomit God, because there was a Vomit God that was recorded from Time Capsule in 94 or 95 or something like that. That's more what I was asking about.
Oh no, yeah, no, I wasn't involved in any of that projects.
But I think John Merriman was, I think, the old Vomit God.
Yeah,
are you more of a live take guy, or do you like to track and layers and whatnot?
You know what? If I can do it all in one take, I will.
Yeah.
Of course, just a little no, I don't like the layers thing. And, I know we did a couple of them in your place, but that's when I needed also, I was like, if I can't do it live, I'm not doing it, like deicide vocals, you know, how they do the highs and the lows, and that's all Glenn Benton. And I was like, if I can't do it live, I'm not doing it. And that's why, so I did some of that stuff in, you know, in your studio, but then to do it live though, I had Otto to come back and back me up with those gurgly freaking, you know, death metal vocals. But, no, I like to do, I mean, if I fuck up, of course, yeah, stop it. But I'd rather just start all over, you know, and just try to hit one track, one shot, one track.
Have you guys ever done a live recording as like the whole band where you're in different rooms or you just recorded everybody at once?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. How'd you like that?
It's totally fine, you know, and as long as I got a window and I can see what's going on and, you know, and I'm going to be, what the heck's the name of that? Man, I'm really bad with my memory today. The Adnauseam demo. So that was tracked out, but the very first one is coming out on Doomed to Obscurity Records here pretty soon as I can get the mastering back. But our very first demo that we recorded at CEC Studios, which is kind of like a school, and Geraldo from Catheter was our engineer. And we all just played in separate rooms, played live, and then he mixed, mastered it, did everything. And it was more for a school project, but we liked it so much that, you know, but it never got released though. It never got released because we didn't know how to market ourselves. You know, we didn't know how to market ourselves. So I dug everything out. Doomed to Obscurity Records said, yeah, dude, let's put it out. So I'm waiting for the master of that one. It's when we were called Decimation, and then the Another Horror Life is going to be coming out as well on the same disc.
So how old were you on the Geraldo one?
18, 19, 18. Yeah, I think I was 18.
94, 95, 93, somewhere in there. Oh, fucking hell.
89, 88, 89. I think it was the winter of 89 that we did that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of time. So all that time, any lessons or habits that have stuck with you from the studio side of things?
Yes. One thing I like to do, and is no matter how badass those monitors that are sitting on that engineer's studio, you know, tables, sometimes plugging directly into the board and hearing things through the headphones is so you can hear mishaps. You can hear gates that haven't been closed on cymbals, and, you know, stuff in the background that you're not going to hear because, you know, somebody decides to move and their chair's squeaky. Oh, well, you just missed that part, you know? And I mean, I would literally, with you, I didn't have to, cause you knew what you were looking for. You knew what we were looking for, you know, and same thing with Jeff and Firestorm. He knew exactly what we were looking for. So I didn't have to sit. Plus Jeff was in a super freaking small room too. His control room there was barely any room in there to even hear a mouse fart. So I didn't have to do anything like that. But I think it was called Mile High Studios, the first 3 zombie albums, man.
Shout out.
And I would just come in and plug directly into the board, so that way I could hear anything that was missed by that engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're another one of these OG Colorado death metal legends, bro. Like, and that's just what it is, dude. And so, you know, I like giving props to like the old school heroes. Yeah. And I don't tell that to all the girls either. So, but, so big moves next chapter, man. Like, so is that going to be your last show, dude? Like something tells me no.
You know, it's almost like professional wrestling. Never say no, you know, right. Never say never. But I mean, for right now, at least for, you know, the Colorado chapter of my life.
Sure.
I think that was my last one, you know, and
how'd that feel?
You know, it felt good. It did. I mean, I'm going to miss the shows a little bit, let's say, you know, yeah. But I'm gonna more miss the camaraderie in the rehearsal space, you know, and
absolutely,
and just the bullshitting and, you know, and just having fun, and I would much rather just sit in a rehearsal space and just jam for 3 hours with dudes a week than do shows,
Absolutely.
But
well, I don't know about that. I mean, I do love the shows, but the jam space is
carrying an Ampeg bass amp down a flight of fucking stairs or carrying it back up the stairs at 2:00 in the morning.
Yes.
Don't miss that.
Like I was hauling my gear out for that Legion show, and I'm like, man, I used to be able to pick these things up by myself 5 years ago, man. I was like calling my son. I'm like, son, I'm helping you get out of the basement, dude.
That's awesome.
Look, I don't remember these things being so damn heavy. But and who knows? Who knows what will come up there? There's not a huge metal scene in Tennessee, and then the part of Clarksville that I'm going to, I mean, I don't think there's any metal bands up there really, But
for you,
I don't know. You might be surprised.
We'll see. Maybe there's a Tom Petty band that needs a bassist. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd do it. Just to have some fun.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't want to do heavy gigging anymore, man. I'm just not wired that way. I'm just I got kids, I got grandkids, I got
congratulations.
Girls. Yeah, thank you. And just my priorities have changed, especially over the last 5-6 years. As soon as my stepdaughter decided to start having kids, my priorities started to change a little bit. And it's not that I'm not going to quit jamming. I mean, the next room over, I've got plenty of gear and several guitars and stuff. And, I still fiddle around no matter what, but, is it my final gig? I don't know. I don't know, but as far as Colorado goes, most likely, unless something big comes up and Nick says, let's get one last gig going before you jet, or let's do, online jamming.
Sorry, I missed it, man. I'm up here in Idaho.
No, sweat, dude.
I found out about your last show through a YouTube comment. Like, please come out because it was I had started spreading the podcast around, and there's somebody online that does old school Denver death metal videos, and still is in the whole thing. And she was like, "Oh, I hope you don't miss Chris' last show on the 25th at Black Sky." And I saw it, and it wasn't like on my thing. I was like, "Oh shit!" And 25th came and went, and I was like, "Oh fuck!" And and because I love Black Sky too. Those guys are fucking great.
Yeah,
they're them and how do you say it? True or Truve? On Broadway, fucking phenomenal. One of the best bars I've ever fucking been to. But
got my Black Sky hoodie right here.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, those guys have supported local metal for so long, and even before they were a brewery, they've supported local metal, and I got nothing but mad respect for both of them. And Harry's always, I'll always love that guy, dude. He brewed a zombie beer with me. He did 2 Legion beers with us. We just did a Legion cherry lager. I don't know if it's still on tap, but I'm not a big brewery fan, but that was a damn good beer, I'll have to admit. And and like you go into Black Sky now, and they have the big Zombie Hate Brigade banner up there that we had for the Jungle Stacy video, hanging up there for everybody to see. And we got that
awesome
destroyed bass that we stuck Zombie Hate Brigade stickers all over it, but they display it with pride, and that's freaking awesome.
Contemplating having my birthday party there this year.
Hell yeah, dude. Pizza and beer. Come on.
If I'm having my birthday party there, because it's going to be a big one. I just hope it don't get too fucking out of line.
Is it going to be all your friends? Well, they're all old.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody's old.
Well, what I'm saying is, nobody passes out in the parking lot, hits their head.
They fall off their walker.
Brewery beers, man.
Right, yeah.
Freaking
Yeah, heck yeah.
Hasn't drank in 6 years, and then finally drinks 4 beers and fucking or falling asleep at the bar.
That's why when I go there, I'm like 2 beers max, man. Max, a piece of pizza, dude. Otherwise, out. No.
Oh, that's great.
So how has your relationship with music changed over the years?
I don't want to say that I've gotten more mature, but I've definitely gotten older, you know. So I do enjoy a lot of other stuff, you know. I mean, I was raised on Tom Petty. I'll always be a Tom Petty fan. Yeah, Mumford and Sons. I really like Mumford and Sons. Even some of this new country. My wife is really into the country stuff and bands like Chris Stapleton. You know, the dude's really freaking good, man. I really
You'll
enjoy
like
it.
Tennessee then.
Yeah, you know, and when we were out there, you know, they even have a metal festival that I'm thinking on.
Absolutely, there's some metal bands.
Yeah, that I'm thinking on traveling to in Knoxville in October.
That's what we're thinking about going, dude. Is we're thinking about going to Knoxville. Yeah,
dude, it's such a pretty state
outside of there. Yeah,
you know, it's pretty light on the metal music, but I mean, and I'm by far no big, you know, country music fan, but there are some stuff, you know. I love Jimmy Buffett, you know, so.
You lost me there, brother.
That's my beach music when I go to Florida. Go to my in-laws, dude. Jimmy Buffett, bro.
My wife's like, "Oh, we're having a company thing in Las Vegas, and it's Jimmy Buffett." I'm like, "Well, I'm just gonna have fun with that. Enjoy your cheeseburger."
You better bring your lost shaker of salt.
Non-metal moment. See, that's called balance, man. You've got yeast, you've got yeast infection, and Jimmy Buffett. It's like that's someone that's got a true balance in life.
You know, I love it. Of course, you know, the '70s metal, you know, Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, and
yeah,
you know, I still love Van Halen. I like the Sammy Hagar era just as much.
Yeah, you lost me there, brother.
Yeah, you can't do Van Hagar.
I think the band became a little bit more mature when Sammy Hagar came in. So
no, it's not.
Turned into love songs.
You know, when you start getting into songs like that, it's kind of like, you know, got to hit some more of the B-sides. But
I like Sammy. Yeah. Like Sammy as a dude's awesome, but yeah, Van Hagar it's a big no for me, big dog.
But hey, you know, I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, I'll openly admit it, man.
I'm sure. I mean, I like some of you guys that probably want to slap me for, like, I don't know. I like Dave Matthews Band. How's that?
There you go.
Like,
see,
you know,
yeah, my neighbor called me Mumford. Shut up, Mumford. And I'm like,
yeah. And I like Tom Petty too. I'm not gonna lie. I was sad. Awesome. I was sad when he died.
You know what, dude? I was struck by literally 3 musicians, man. Prince was hard.
Oh,
you know, and I was like, dude,
especially the way he went.
Yeah, dude. And
who would have thought?
Exactly. And he was, and man, he was just a hell of a musician all around.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't just a guitar player and a singer, man. He was a full-on musician. He knew everything.
Dude, do me a favor and look up on YouTube. It's an unreleased thing from, I think it's the late 70s, and he did like a jazz funk. Like it's recorded in a studio, and it's all instrumental. And I think he plays like 90% of the music, and it never came out. It was unreleased, and it is fucking phenomenal. It's like, why didn't this come out?
Yeah, I'm going to see a Prince cover band on Saturday. As a matter of fact,
cool.
You know, and then Eddie Van Halen and Tom Petty, man, those were like musicians' deaths, dude. Where I was just like, fuck, dude, I just lost my childhood, man.
Even David Bowie, like a bunch of people died in 2016. I think it was 2016. Like it was like David Bowie, a bunch of other dudes, and you're like, fuck, man, like everybody cool, like going away, like fuck. And then when
I have a guitar because of the Hot for Teacher video.
See?
Yeah.
That was my first thought.
I was like, I want to do that.
AC.
I want to walk over the desks and shred for the little girls in the library.
Fucking
In 8th grade.
Yeah.
my first bought tape. My mom used to tape tapes for me, so all my tapes that I had back in the day was like my mom like taping me like the Beatles or shit. I think one of my first tapes it wasn't even the Beatles. It was the soundtrack to Sgt. Pepper's, which is not the Beatles. It's like Bee Gees and Peter Frampton and shit. I think that was my first tape, but my first real tape that was bought from a store, I got it on my 9th birthday in 1984, which was 1984. And I was like, I wanted that fucking record so bad because of fucking Hot for Teacher. Hot for Teacher and all the videos that came out on MTV. I was like, I want this fucking. My mom bought it for me and I was fucking over the moon. I hear it.
My first cassette was AC/DC's Highway to Hell. And
there you go.
My mom ordered it off of the Columbia House thing.
We've already had this discussion.
Shout out Columbia House. 2 shows in a row.
I probably owe them a lot of money. I got a lot of funny names out there underneath that stuff. I'll tell you what.
I'm going to have to make this into a short. The wife brought that up. Yeah.
I saw somebody online recently, and they had a Columbia House shirt, and it just made me laugh. Like
I would totally wear it, dude.
Oh, I would
totally wear it. I got to give something back to them, dude, because I got a lot of discs and cassettes out of them after I learned how to.
Work. Yeah.
My name is Mark.
So, yeah.
10 free discs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man, I really appreciate you coming on. As we're getting kind of down to the end here, I got a few questions left. Like, what advice would you give the younger bands coming up these days entering the studio?
Entering the studio or just being in a band in general?
Both. You could do both.
I mean, being in a band, don't think that you're going to be the next Eddie Van Halen or Tom Petty.
Right.
Anything.
Yeah, the next anything, really. I mean, you need to walk in there with an open mind, and by God, put the egos aside. My Lord, shake hands with the people that want to shake hands with you. Give a T-shirt to the person that can't afford one, but is actually a fan and comes to your gigs. Be a little humble. Be a little humble, and if it's your first time in the studio, listen to the producer, listen to the engineer. They may have some ideas. And if they're not capturing the sound, then you went into the wrong studio.
Right.
You need to know when to cut your losses, And it took me 3 releases before I realized I'm in the wrong studio, and you just got to know when to cut your losses. And if you've already spent money on it, I mean, you got to hire them, you got to hire them. So you got to give them the money for that time. But learn how to cut your losses and do it quickly, because not every studio is going to capture what you think that what you're capturing up here is not always what's going to come out in that studio. Make sure you got the right place, do your research, do the research, and especially in studios, man, make sure you get the right people.
Yeah. And so really you kind of went through like the next 2 questions is really because I had, what do you know now that you wish you would have known 20 years ago?
Exactly that, man.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I wasted a lot of time and a lot of money in different studios and trying to get them to capture my sound, and still spending money and still come out with that same product, and that's when I had to learn how to cut my losses. And
I think we might come from a different generation, all 3 of us, where when we would go into the studio, we, at least maybe we thought we had our sound.
Yes.
We worked on it. We worked in the rehearsal space, Adnauseam, shout out, to get that sound down. And then when you came into the studio, it's like, oh no, I've got all these amps and everything else. It's like, no, I don't want that. Record my stuff, record my sound. And I don't know if the kids nowadays, I'm sure there's some talented kids out there, but it seems nowadays they just go to the studio and say, give me a sound, and then add it to my, my neural DSP so I can take that on the road with me. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And there's so many nifty products too that they have nowadays.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And and they're able to capture anybody's sound. really.
Right.
And
right.
You know, some of these bands don't even they don't even play with full rigs anymore. You know,
no, we just talked about that. We had we had Al Glassman from Job for a Cowboy on last week, and he was like, yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's in-ears and it's all dummy cabs.
Dummy cabs.
He's like, yeah, everybody's bringing their
shit? Why are you lugging shit you don't need to fucking lug?
And he's like, so when you're up on stage and you're like, yeah, get up on the stage, all the kids get up on stage, but they don't hear nothing. It's just and they're like, what the yeah, he's like, yeah, it's different. But if you're a band, he's like, you know, like, because he, you know, he played in Despised Icon, and he was just like, yeah, like talking to all my, they're like, dude, you know, when you go to Europe, you don't have to rent all this gear. You just bring your freaking Kemper and plug in. And so, and then you get, yeah, this is my studio sound now. And we had that conversation about like the Tonax and the different stuff. And so this is the world we live in. And part of me, like, it made me sad. I was like, damn, dude, like there's some kind of romantic thing about looking that son of a bitch and blowing the first guy in the front rows, you know,
face off,
eyeballs out. Yeah.
The technology doesn't bother me whatsoever, but it's
I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome.
But the dummy cabs thing, it perplexes the fuck out of me, because it's like, I don't give a fuck if they weigh 5 pounds. Why are you
still hauling it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just throw up a tapestry or something.
Yeah,
just throw up a backdrop.
Do something crazy. Like, if you're gonna lug all that gear, fucking dress some crazy, like, if you've ever seen the movie Maniac, just have a bunch of mannequins in the back with fucking like wigs like nailed into their head with blood. Do that instead of, you know, if you need something in place of your fucking amps, like, do something cool. Like, you have dummy amps. It's like, Jesus Christ.
I hear you, dude.
I don't know. Well, if you think about it, though, I'm sure a ton of bands we've seen back in the day, they weren't running that whole wall.
The wall of amps was never.
They weren't running the whole wall.
No. Except for Motorhead.
Maybe Motorhead. Slayer.
And Slayer, yeah. Motorhead and Slayer, all of those fuckers were plugged in.
Well, is there a philosophy or lesson that stuck with you through all these years, all these projects?
Oh, man. Well, you know, work hard. You know, do it as much as you possibly can, and do it before you start raising a family.
Amen.
You know,
to that. Yeah.
That is super hard. That is super hard. And don't, you know, man, I take it with a grain of salt. Have as much, you know, once it starts becoming a job, that's when it starts to suck, you know. And as soon as that gig comes up and you're just like, oh, I wish I didn't have a gig tonight, you need to start second guessing yourself, you know.
Right.
You know, would you rather be at home with the lady watching movies, or would you rather go out and play a gig? You know, and honestly, I mean, after a while, it got like that for me. You know, we were playing so many shows, and I was in 2 bands at the same time.
Yeah, you've played a lot of shows.
You know, and I was just like, God dang, dude. And then it became more about the shows and not about the writing. And you know,
you don't have time to write if you're playing so many shows.
So many damn shows.
You're always rehearsing.
Yeah, and then, you know, and then you got to lug up and you got to go to Arizona, and then you got to go to Utah, and you got to come back to Colorado, and you got to go to Cheyenne, and then back down to New Mexico, and you're just like, nah, dude, I'm not wired that way. I'm ready to chill. You know, I mean, I'm totally down for onesie twosie gigs, but you know, not an every weekend or week thing. I'm not anymore. You know,
the only thing I would add is the humble thing too, because I think a lot of young kids don't realize about that shit. And it's like they kind of crawl up their own asses. Do you know what I'm saying?
They're all playing guitar like it's a video game, bro. Like, you know, these kids freaking shred, dude. It's like, you know, we grew up listening to freaking Van Halen and Tom Petty. They grew up listening to Cephalic Carnage.
Right.
You know,
and you're absolutely right, dude.
Yeah.
The humble thing is still like, I don't give a fuck how fucking badass you are.
All right. The best dudes are the most humble.
Yeah, because it's like,
wouldn't you agree, Christian?
What's that?
The best musicians, usually are the most humble.
Yeah. You know,
like the really badass shred. There's always the pretenders, you know, they're like, you know, but like the really badass dudes are always chill, dude. They don't have to.
Yeah, because I mean, they let the music do the talking for them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I, I'm not trying to say that, that people want to actually meet me, but, at just about every show, I'm the one that's behind the merch booth. So, somebody comes up and they're like, oh, hey, you're so-and-so from so-and-so, and it's like, yeah. And they want to have a couple words with me. So I engage with them. I make sure that they understand that I'm listening to them,
Yeah.
And
you appreciate them being there.
Yeah, appreciate. Yeah, every single person that ever came to our gigs, dude. I appreciate everybody, and the people that actually want to take the time to speak to you, lend them your ear. But listen. Sometimes those conversations may be a little bit longer, and your wife is waiting in the car. But that's
sometimes those
sacrifice.
Those conversations are fascinating, though. Sometimes they're like, sometimes you'll just be talking to a random dude, and they'll tell you the craziest, coolest fucking story, and it's like, oh, my brother happened to be in this band, and you're like, really?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, you get done. Yes, and you get. And then the conversation steamrolls. Next thing you know, you're talking to this person for 20 more minutes, and they bought you a beer, and you're like, oh shit, my uncle used to be the roadie for Jimi Hendrix. No shit. What?
Right. Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, like I would never turn down a gig. And so it was like, oh, you want me to play on a Monday night at at the Bingo Palace? Like, all right, I think they're into metal. Like, and I remember once there was like this dude, he was sitting there, and the place was dead. I think we might have had like our girlfriends, a couple of homies. That was it. And there was this one dude sitting there having a beer. And I walked by and he said, hey, man, that was some cool shit. And he's like, can I buy you a beer? And I was like, sure, bro, let me buy you a beer. And I sat down and we were sitting there talking. He's like, yeah, I've been working it because my band at the time was called Postal. And he's sitting there and he's like, yeah, I've been working at the post office for like 35 years. And he's like, I'm a military vet. And he's like, dude, sometimes I just sit in my car out in the parking lot, and the stuff that you're saying, man, he's like, it's just ringing true to me. And I was like, bro, we're joking. We're just having fun, brother. Let me buy you another beer. Come on, man. We're just having a good time. Like, and it was like, so, yeah, like talk to people. You never know what they're thinking, but,
well, hopefully you talk that dude out of blowing up his building, man.
I hope so, dude. Like, man, life's too short, man, and they worth it, my man. Like, it's jokes, brother. These are jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I never took none of my stuff too seriously either. Like whether we were doing gore or the heavy stuff, it was just fun. That's just the way we grew up. It was like, who can be more brutal and more shocking? And just when you thought like your homies band was all crazy, your other homies band, you'd be like, damn,
right?
You're called what? What's the name of that song?
Well, that's like
Goratory,
or anal cunt, or anal blast, dismembered fetus, or like, there's already the name is telling you, like,
there was way too many fetuses for a while, but dismembered fetus was first. Damn it. Right?
Those were always fun shows.
Those were always fun shows.
The best.
You know what? When you're going back to that question that you had earlier about the crazy shows, dude, probably some of the most crazy ones were when I was in Fetus, and we didn't care, we didn't care, we had blow up dolls and
I remember
that. I'd have like cases of beer in the back, dude. And I would go back and get 2 drinks of a beer and then I would just launch it into the crowd. And then next thing you know, there's trash flying and you're just like,
beer grenade.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the people in the pit would grab it and throw it to the back of the fucking, I was telling Jason, there was one, well, maybe 2 or 3, but fucking 2 songs in, there would be Rob and Josh, because Josh, I think, was playing bass at the time, right? And
Rob was playing guitar. They would go back and forth between bass.
Yeah, they would always trade off, but it would be like second song in, and this is Dismember Fetus, so they're not 5-minute songs by any means.
Yeah.
But they come out, there's 4 strings on the bass, there's 6 strings on the guitar, and by the second song, there's 1 string on the bass and 3 strings on the guitar.
When we were in New Mexico, when we were in New Mexico, the sound was horrible. It was horrible. That was a crazy gig. And by the third song, he just dropped the bass and he just launched it, just kicked it. We're like, okay, what are we gonna do for the bass breakdown songs? No, nothing. He just noised them. And then we did an interview for some local television show after that with Josh and I, and we were just talking shit, and that's how we were. We were just talking shit. But when other people that were coming around, in the area where the interview was, they thought we were being serious. So like dudes literally showed up at our hotel wanting to fight us that night. Oh, they took out knives after Rob and everything. That was the first time that I ever had I don't know what the hell you want to call it, but everybody was coming out of the hotel rooms and we were going down the stairs to fight these dudes in the parking lot. And I was always kind of the person that was more like, chill out, chill out. And those guys are like, rah, rah,
for a minute.
Yeah. And that was the first time I was going down the stairs and I saw that dude pull out this big knife and he was feet from Rob and I just blacked out. I'll never forget. Everything became fuzzy around me and everything. And I was like,
we're going to die.
Yeah. And I was like 10 seconds later and I finally came back through and, and by that time police were there and got everybody out of there, but nobody got stabbed or anything. But yeah, that's the first
people
time.
Were probably on the ground though. I can guarantee if Rob was around, somebody was on the ground.
Yeah. And it was a band by the name of Manias, I think. It was like their friends.
That's good memory.
and then they came through town and they played at Cephalic's warehouse. And yeah, the Fetus Boys, they stormed that place, broke the drummer's arm, beat the shit out of him. Yeah. They beat the hell out of him. They're like,
comes around, goes around, you know what I'm saying?
Well, and that's kind of the way they looked at it, and we're just being assholes. We were just
fucking
being
around.
assholes. Yeah, we were fucking around and they took us serious. And actually came to our hotels, and so when they came to Denver, they got the Denver beat down by, I wasn't there, but
there's a few folks got that.
I wasn't there.
So where can people hear your work, bro?
What's that?
Where can people hear your stuff?
Well, Zombie Hate Brigade is on Spotify. I'm still working on uploading some things there, here and there. Now that my computer's in storage, I've been kind of slacking on a little bit of that.
Sure.
Adnauseam Denver Bandcamp. So adnauseamdenver.bandcamp.com. And
I'll post all the links too, bro.
Cool. What else? Of course, well, Zombie is still active on Facebook. I don't got an Adnauseam Facebook. Doomed to Obscurity Records will be releasing the new Adnauseam here pretty soon. I do got a couple things that are coming down the pipeline, which it's a possible yeast infection vinyl from
awesome.
To the Death Records. And then we'll see what happens with the Fester and Pew stuff. And then also a possible, like a Zombie 2-disc comp. So we'll see what happens with that as well. But those are still on the burner. I got to get this Adnauseam thing out of my hair first and
sure.
get all that up. And I still got to put up another Adnauseam album on the Bandcamp.
Then there's your music videos that the Trauma team made, which was like Toxic Avenger team. Of people that don't know, made 2 Zombie Hate Brigade videos that are on YouTube.
Yeah, one is
go
like
check them out, man.
And another one was like edited live shows with some Toxic Avenger stuff in there. And but you just Google Zombie Hate Brigade and luckily that band was in the era where everybody could videotape you, so there's quite a few videos on YouTube of Zombie for sure.
Well, I was going to ask you about Lloyd. Did you guys ever get to meet Lloyd?
One time. Yeah.
I was going to say, I thought I talked to Nick about that and he was like, we got to fucking meet Lloyd for like 5 seconds or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And we actually did we how bands used to do the 8x10 promos and stuff like that. We actually did a goofy little promo and it's with him in there.
Awesome.
Yeah. Put the logo down there and the band contacts down in the corner and stuff, but it's a picture of us with Lloyd Kaufman.
Fuck yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. For people that know, you know. If you don't know, yeah, you don't know what you're missing out
look
on.
it up,
For
man.
the people that know that know.
Goofy ass, gnarly ass, sexy gore.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for coming on, Christian, man. I appreciate it. Good luck with your move to Tennessee, and keep in touch, bro. I might come out here and visit you a little bit, you know,
come
like
on down, brother, or come on over, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And you,
all right, thanks, Brian. Nice job on your first show with me, man. I appreciate it. All right, everybody, thanks for that came by and watched. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, y'all. Take care.